Hello, everyone. We'll just give about a minute for everyone to file in here before we get started. Okay, so in the interest of time, I think I'll just get things started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Advanced Manufacturing Outlook discussion. I'm super excited to dive in with our experts today. Just as a short introduction, I'm Sadi Muktadir, the editor of Canadian Manufacturing, where we cover manufacturing news across Canada in all its verticals. I wanted to start off by thanking our report sponsors, Salesforce, Cispro, Alberta Innovates, and Alps Welding Limited. Without them, this kind of research wouldn't be made possible. Today's roundtable is sponsored by EMC, Engine, and Cispro. And before we go around and introduce our panelists, I'd just like to remind all of our panelists to stay on mute. Unless you're speaking, it'll make things much smoother. I'll introduce our panelists today. We'll start off with EMC, and then Engine, and then Cispro. And they'll speak a little bit about what they do in the manufacturing industry and their involvement. And then we'll get to some of the key findings from our survey and discussion back in August. So without further ado, our panelists today are JP Giroux, President of Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium. For more than 2 decades, JP has held positions with economic development, NGO, management consulting, industrial, and corporate organizations throughout Canada. Beginning as an economic development officer in Canada's capital region, JP has devoted the past 15 plus years towards developing innovative workplace performance-based solutions for the Canadian manufacturing sector. JP's expertise in managing innovative projects has resulted in the creation of advanced human resources technologies, skills and change management strategies, online and in-person certification programs, such as the EMC Harvard Supervisory Certification Program for managers and Manufacturing Essentials Certification Program for leaders, supervisors, and production workers, as well as learning and business impact assessments and labor market intelligence resource initiatives. JP holds a BAA and an MSc from Laval University and Université du Québec, specializing in human resources and industrial relations. Joining him as well from EMC is Scott McNeil-Smith, who is the Vice President of Manufacturing Sector Performance. For the past 30 years, Scott has worked with corporate, industrial, commercial, and nonprofit sector organizations with the key objective of creating positive and sustainable growth. Currently, he's the Vice President of Manufacturing Sector Performance with EMC and Program Lead with Energy, Advanced Manufacturing, and Workforce Initiatives for its manufacturing and industrial members. Scott is responsible for the strategic planning, design, and deployment of many industry-driven initiatives which affect sector performance, including EMC's labor market intelligence projects, energy, cybersecurity, and sector initiatives, as well as the development of next-generation future of manufacturing programs for EMC's members. Next up on our panelists, we have Jason Myers, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Next Generation Manufacturing Canada, NGen, Canada's Advanced Manufacturing Supercluster, an initiative funded by the Government of Canada that will leverage more than $500 million over the next 3 years in collaborative, industry-led projects aimed at building world-leading advanced manufacturing capabilities in Canada. Jay is an award-winning business economist who specializes in industrial and technological change. Between 2007 and 2016, he served as president and CEO of CME, Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, Canada's largest industry and trade association. Jay's been widely recognized as one of the most influential policy advocates in Canada. He's an advisor to both private and public sector leaders and has counseled Canadian prime ministers and premiers, as well as senior corporate executives and policymakers around the world. He is also a member of the advisory board of the World Manufacturing Forum and a regular contributor to our very own Plant magazine. And last but certainly not least, we have Steve Bassaw joining us, the product manager at Cispro Canada. Steve Bassaw has over 20 years of experience in ERP software, enterprise resource planning, and supply chain and manufacturing. He also has the Certified Supply Chain Professional designation from the Association for Supply Chain Management. In the ERP world, his diverse roles have included product management, solution architect, pre-sales, consulting, and support. Before that, he gained valuable hands-on experience at a manufacturing plant in roles such as planning, scheduling, and purchasing. using ERP software to drive process improvements. Steve also enjoys giving back. He is chair of the advisory committee for business and IT program at BCIT and mentors students in the mentoring program. One of Steve's core talents is the ability to translate software and supply chain concepts into layperson's terms. So with that introduction out of the way, I'm going to jump into our presentations by handing it off to JP Giroux.
Good morning, and thank you to the Annex Business Group for organizing this. This is, for us, it's a tradition to reconnect with everybody, and as well as the industry. So perfect opportunity. Thank you for all this. About EMC. EMC, just a few words. We are the Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium. We represent all sizes, from large size company to the small and medium size, which really is the backbone of the Canadian manufacturing sector. All sectors, there's about 14, 15 subsector in manufacturing, from textile, food, processing, automation, obviously automotive, aerospace. They're all part of the EMC family. And as well as all level of sophistication. We're going to be talking about 4.0 here. However, all level of technology is part of our network. What we believe at EMC, we're a consortium-based organization. In fact, we have 60 active consortium, about 13,000 members that are active online. We really believe in collaboration. So it's a best case here of exchanging best practices and learning from each other, and leadership for manufacturing. And it's more, obviously the timing for leadership is it's more than ever at all levels, from shop floor workers all the way up to CEOs. So these are the pillars, as well as for this conversation. We also have an agenda for advanced manufacturing in Canada, which is really based on automation, digitalization, productivity, and culture, like building a culture to embrace technology. Now, I just want to maybe share some of the key issues that are affecting manufacturing. Maybe if we can move to the top challenges for 2022, and I'll focus on skills and labor shortages because it's number one. It's well documented. You could just pick up the paper and it's upfront. It's a national issue. Let's talk about labor shortages and why we have issues right now. We're not doing very well when it comes to youth. That's one of the biggest issue that we're facing. If for the future of the sector, about 25% of the youth of our workforce is under 35 years and under. So this is a big segment that is not considering yet manufacturing. We have to do a much better job. Same thing for women. I know there's been a lot of attracting women into the sector. We're sitting at 26, 27%. The growth is, we've been monitoring that metrics for the last 4 or 5 years, and there's so much to do on that front to get to a bigger number, and that will help, obviously, the labor shortages. Same thing for foreign trained workers. We're sitting at 10%. 10%. We've got to do a much better job at attracting. So labor shortages is one aspect, but there's solution out there. When it comes to skills, it's really aligned with the fact that our post-secondary institution are offering degrees that are not necessarily being popular with the audience. So there's so much to do on that front, as well as just-in-time training, the ability for us to respond to ongoing changes and speed of change in the technology. There is a stats that I will show in a few minutes. For the anticipated change, so we're also looking at forecasting when we look at the data. So right now, when we look at, in the next slide, please, when we look at the technology that what the industry is saying about the new, what are the issues when it comes to the next 5 years. Investing in production is number one, as well as hiring new employees. So 50% here is on the top of the concern of the manufacturers. We'll go with the next, please. Here's maybe I'll turn to Scott here on and I wanted you to pay attention on the unfilled orders, which is 93 billion, sitting at 93 billion. So that's our ability to get the orders out. Maybe Scott, you want to speak to this?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Just very quickly, EMC and the discussions and research we've done with Canadian industry, we've got a direct correlation between the skills and labor gaps and shortages and industry capacity and output in the country. And so kind of pertinent to the conversation today related to technology, those unfilled orders we're seeing as being a direct cause of diminished capacity utilization. If you picture what industry would look like at full 100% production output across the country, the potential economic improvement there is huge. And we won't get there, though, unfortunately. And we've heard directly from industry that says without filling those skills and labor shortages, the skills gap, and adopting technology, that gap can't be made up. And so we're seeing there's a huge opportunity here, but right now it's also causing the sector to lag.
Thank you, Scott. Moving with workforces, and this is much part of the EMC plan to address solution. And if we can move with some of the challenges we're facing on, here's going back to the labor shortages, like we could see the top two here that are much related to the quality of the new recruits. So that's top of mind here, having issues to attract candidate that offer obviously the right skill and the right experience. We're still having an issue also on the quantity, which is the low number of applicants, but retention turnover is a big issue. Now we look at the skills, and this is the map for manufacturing. If we can turn to the next slide about the competency. Here's the game plan for AMC when it comes to the skills agenda. And it's divided in three areas, and it's going to be relevant for the conversation and a roundtable conversation in order to attract the youth and obviously the next generation. There's pillars that are absolutely essential, and they're the foundational capability, and these are what we call the employability skills, and obviously the skills you learn at school, as well as what we call the manufacturing essential skills, where it speaks to the capability to work with others, obviously to collaborate, to solve problems, which is critical thinking, which the next level are the technical capability. And that's related to digital adoption, it's related to skills trade. We all know that we have some shortages in the trade area, as well as health and safety and green manufacturing, which is really a big topic these days. And the last level, which is related to leadership, as I mentioned, from shop floor workers all the way up to CEO level. Now, related more to the advanced manufacturing skills and the digital skills, we have been in the market talking to industry leaders, as well as middle managers and supervisors, on what are the demand for technical capability. And these are some of the area. ERP system is obviously number one, but you get into mechanical engineering, industry technologists, 3D system and 3D printing. So the red is the current demand and the blue is the future demand. Now, more specifically on other skills, such as robotics, automation, and this is in the next slide. We also monitor where is the industry, where's the state of the industry when it comes to automation, robotics, analyzing obviously data. Cybersecurity, we'll be talking about cybersecurity and the challenges around cybersecurity with the industry during the panel. So these are some of the data that's been collected on the technical skills per se. One of the biggest challenge, and this in the next in this slide right now, is we don't invest enough in the Canadian manufacturer. Our employers are compared to the rest of the employers in Canada and internationally. You look at the numbers here. There's a big segment, and it's about 25% who are not investing at all in training, and very well documented the correlation between investing in training and being more productive. So this is a challenge for us to raise our investment in training in order to obviously to embrace the challenges of the 4.0 technology and what's coming up. Another stats that I want to share, and this is a very concerning one, and it speaks to everybody who's in the service industry, more specifically in the skills development industry and the training. If you look at the last metrics, and this is 750 firms that were consulted earlier this year, 80% of the companies are saying that training programs don't align with the needs of employers. So it speaks to our capacity on the supply side or on the educational side to address the need of the industry on an ongoing basis. So just want to, and I mentioned this, and I will close on how EMC is doing their business. And for us, it's all about people, process, and plant. That's the pillars or the foundation for us to address the needs of the manufacturers. And these are the type of initiatives that we are currently doing, as you can see, on capacity, on productivity, on process maturity. And this is obviously a big aspect of the conversation that we're going to be addressing: advanced technology, plant management, as well as drivers. And just to leave you with one aspect in our view, just to close on this one, is for us, skills and capability gaps are affecting manufacturing investment, and it's about building internal capability. And that goes with a commitment from our firm, as our commitment with all the ecosystem to work together, obviously, and to collaborate to adopt new technology. So I'll stop it here. I hope I respect my time and turn to my colleague for the next part. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, JP. Jay Myers here. I first of all want to thank everybody for the opportunity to participate today in this discussion. I think, as JP was saying and Scott beforehand, it's an important time to really dig deeply into analysis about the changes going on in Canadian manufacturing, but also more broadly in the labor force, in our tech sector, and the types of innovation that we have in Canada, and to focus on building world-leading advanced manufacturing capabilities in Canada. That's what NGen is all about, and our vision is to take all of these fantastic research capabilities, tech capabilities, and manufacturing capabilities and workforce capabilities we have in this country that are all too often siloed, and bring them together and look at creating not only globally competitive but world-leading capabilities by combining all of those strengths. So maybe we could go to the next slide. Also want to say, and Sadi mentioned this at the very beginning, how pleased we are to be able to support and take part in the research that Annex Media has undertaken, but also working with JP and Scott and team at EMC. This is a lot of that research is feeding directly into us and informing a number of our programs as well. As Sadi was saying, we lead the advanced manufacturing supercluster. We see that federal funding as great seed funding to get things done here, but it's not just about funding projects. It's about promoting capabilities, connecting across the ecosystem. I hate that term; sounds like a frog pond. But trying to connect business services, technology providers, manufacturers, our academic institutions, research centers, funding organizations together to really build something that is exceptionally strong in advanced manufacturing in Canada. We do a lot of funding for world-leading advanced manufacturing projects. Talk a little bit about what we've achieved there, but we are doing a lot of work in building workplace and management capacity, and I think that speaks to a number of the issues that JP raised. Certainly speaks to a number of issues that that have been identified in this in the survey here that we're going to be talking about later. So maybe the next slide, please. Just say we've got members across the country, about 42,000 or 4,200 of them right now. Membership's free. All you have to do is show us how you contribute to advanced manufacturing in Canada, and again, it's a good reflection of that ecosystem. Manufacturers, tech providers, business services companies, colleges, universities, all of the industry networks, innovation centers, researchers, and experts, really focusing on, and of course, finance, but really focusing on advanced manufacturing. We've got lots of great stuff that is spread out everywhere, and not all that much effort really focused on advanced manufacturing leadership, management, skills development, and of course tech development and tech deployment as well. So our focus is on advanced manufacturing and what's needed to boost a really vibrant sector here in Canada. So next one, let me just talk a little bit about some of the projects that we've supported. Next one, please. All of our projects that we've supported, we've invested over $200 million in what I think are some real world-leading projects here. They all have to be transformative. They all have to be next to commercial development, so later stage production development, or at least scale up for production, not full-scale production itself. They all have to contribute to somehow to helping training or sharing IP across the sector, and they all have to be collaborative here. So at least more than two companies, SMEs have to be involved in all of our projects, and you can see what we've achieved here. We've got in 131 projects we've approved to date. We've got 298 industry partners, 56 research partners, 267 of the 298 are small companies. So this is not a big company exercise. It's very much an exercise of trying to put together unique manufacturing solutions by integrating the technology strengths primarily of smaller tech companies to develop something that is really unique and can be commercialized in manufacturing. And if we have larger manufacturing companies involved, they're taking that through their networks, through their supply chain, through their own operations globally. But we're also looking at opportunities to commercialize these projects in other areas. So we know to date we've got created 865 jobs. We're on track to create over 18,000 over the next 5 to 10 years. We've sales that have been realized to date, 1.7 billion. That we've approved 203 million, but we've actually only invested so far about 70 million. So you can do the math. We're more than 20 times return on investment for our investments. So that's not a bad rate of return, particularly for a government funded program. But I don't want to talk so much about our projects as much as some of the issues that we're facing, and I think are reflected in the surveys that have been that JP referred to, as well as the survey that we're talking about today. So maybe you can flip through a couple of slides here, please. Yeah, let's take a look at some of the challenges out there. So we work with StatsCan, survey of 6,000 manufacturers. Only 7% of companies actually do any competitive benchmarking. So the way I read that, we got 93% of manufacturers kind of working in the dark today. Now that's better than their tech companies because only 5% of them do any competitive benchmarking. So most of our tech companies are working in the dark as well. Over 80% of companies have invested in some form of advanced technology over the previous 3 years. But when you ask them what their business objectives are, fewer than half of them have actually achieved their business objective. And I think this is reflected in some of the findings that are coming through in the survey too. One thing to invest, but as JP was pointing out, it's not just about the technology. It's about the people, the process, about making sure you know the business requirements, making sure that the right technology decisions are being made to solve the right problems. And that goes to some very, very basic principles about manufacturing management and manufacturing leadership. It's about the strategy, how do you deliver value to customers, and it's about identifying the processes, the waste, the non-value adding activities in your process, and getting a good feel for what are the business requirements or what are the skills requirements that you need in order to deploy technology successfully, profitably. Only 20% of manufacturers see collaboration as a strategic advantage, and I think that's kind of high. But frankly, what we're seeing are a lot of companies trying to solve problems on their own. And when you ask them, and especially now with new technologies, when you get everybody in a room and ask them about what are the problems you're trying to solve, all of a sudden you realize these are not unique problems. They're problems that are general across the manufacturing sector. And I think there are, even when it comes to looking at opportunities for better workforce development, all sorts of opportunities to work together here. And that's what we're trying to promote. And as JP was saying, now we know 25% of the manufacturing workforce are going to be retired by 2030. We also know that only 5% of the manufacturing workforce right now are 25 years of age or younger. So in order to keep output levels constant, we know that productivity levels have to increase probably by about 25%. So we know that manufacturers have to become more automated. And we know that as people come into the workforce, they need to be much more highly skilled around digital manufacturing, around automation and what's required there. So these issues are front and center for what we do. And one last slide, just to outline some of the initiatives that we're undertaking. A campaign you may have seen it over the summer and continuing now, Careers of the Future, aimed at attracting young people into careers in advanced manufacturing. And it's not about technology, it's not about manufacturing, it's about making a difference and positioning advanced manufacturing as making a big difference in the future, and positioning kids today as front and center and making those differences. Frankly, I'm not nearly as concerned about the digital skills of young people. I think that's overblown by people who don't understand the digital requirements. I think kids are on top of that. What we need to do is make sure that they see manufacturing as a really attractive career, because we're competing with every other sector of the economy. We've got a digital platform that allows kids to and employees learn about coding, to work with robotics and network simulations. We have launched several initiatives around with Indigenous youth. We have an open source training program that we're partnering again with EMC here on this, allowing companies to come in and take a look at what programs are available, training programs, academic programs that could help them upskill their workforce. Our transformation leadership program is really very much a practitioner-based set of roadmaps and tools to help people in manufacturing make good decisions about the types of technologies that are most applicable to their business and how to deploy those and use them most profitably. And then a series of workshops and best practice sessions on focusing on industry trends and maximizing benefits from technology, and then also IP and cyber security management. So that's it in terms of what we do. I just want to say that what I see in being able to work with manufacturers, the tech companies, the researchers, and all of this big sector, and all of the industry networks that support it, we have fantastic potential here in Canada. We need to look at ways that we can work better together. And if there's anything that I think we need to focus on, it's that strategic leadership in the management of not only of technology, but the management of process, the management of the of supply chain, and the types of skills that are required to do that. Not only technical skills and employability skills, but management skills and strategic leadership skills as well. So with that, Scott, pass it over to next to Steve. Sorry, Steve.
Thanks, Jason. Great content by both you and JP. And in fact, the first thing I'd like to say actually is that I'm very happy to be here on behalf of Cispro, because Cispro, what we are all about is manufacturing. Our customer base are small and medium-sized manufacturers. We are passionate about that space. And continuing on from what JP and Jason talked about, it's not about just randomly throwing technology at the problem. You want to be strategic about it. And we fully believe in that. So with that, I'll tell you a bit about who is Cispro. And on this slide, you'll see, for example, some of these numbers, the one system. So we are an ERP software provider. And for the manufacturing and distribution industry, you'll see a bit more about that in a minute. 60 countries, so we're worldwide. 12 regional offices. The 40 years of growth, we are the oldest independent ERP provider out there, more than 40 years. And the 98%, we're quite proud of that. Customers stick with us for a long time. We have many customers that have grown from small, very small manufacturers into the hundreds of millions of dollars. And still using the same Cispro software along the way. So we're really big about helping manufacturers grow and utilize technology the right way at the right time. And on the next slide, we'll just see a little bit more about our footprint. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. And so just one more stat to throw at you. Worldwide, we have more than 15,000 manufacturing and distribution companies using our software. So we do have a global footprint. And yeah, thank you. The next slide here. So we do specialize in manufacturing and distribution. And I guess it's a bit maybe different than there are other ERP systems out there that are specialized or try to specialize in many things. They might do insurance companies and banks and all sorts of service companies. Really, we live and breathe manufacturing and distribution. And if you see at the bottom there, the icons of the benefits we bring to manufacturers, streamlining processes, better quality, optimal inventory management, best practices. That's value that we try to bring to our customers. By the way, I used to be a Cispro customer a long time ago and worked in a manufacturing environment. And I used the same software to do this kind of thing and to actually bring business benefits. So I know how to get there. And we do have lots of people at Cispro who, similar to me, we think of ourselves as, if you ask me, Steve, tell me about yourself. I don't say I'm a software guy. I'm a manufacturing person first, a supply chain person first, who happens to know some technology and how we can insert technology strategically to help your business run better. And that's I guess the personality of who we are. So if we can go to the next slide, just a little bit more on the manufacturing. So these are just some of the industries that we specialize in. So you'll see some of the big ones in Canada: automotive parts, industrial machinery and equipment, tons and tons of small businesses and medium-sized businesses there, fabricated metal, Food and beverage is always big in Canada. Canada has a thriving food and beverage industry, and so on, packaging, plastics and rubber. And we also do distribution as well. And as we know, every manufacturer is a distributor as well. It's an overlapping set of needs that they have. All right, let's go on to the next slide. And this part is really important. You see the words at the top, the right technology, what businesses need when they need it. So I mentioned that we fit small and medium-sized manufacturers. And actually in this survey that Plant Magazine did, the bulk of them are small and medium-sized manufacturers. That's what the Canadian landscape consists of. And those companies typically, they aren't tuned in to the latest technologies out there. They don't know when they need a new technology, what that technology is all about. Our job, we recognize that at Cispro. So we try to provide the right technology at the right time. And what do I mean by that? Some fancy new technologies coming down the horizon. You might not want to be the one who's on the bleeding edge. You know, you've heard of leading edge and bleeding edge. So what we do is we try and vet that for you and say, for your industry, for your size of company, we try to be your business advisors and say, you know, you should be considering strategically this type of technology to gain these types of business improvements. We may not have that conversation with you on day one when that technology rolls out to the world, because it may be too early for you and your size of company. So if there's any one slide in my presentation that's probably the most important, it's this one. We try and help you strategically choose the right technologies at the right time. It's not about just randomly choosing technologies and throwing it at the problem. So next slide, please. And that's it. So that's a quick overview. Just wanted to be brief, right? If you wanted to have any more information about who is Cispro, you can certainly contact us. Some of our contact information I think will be up later, or you can ping me. But thank you very much. And I think I was the last presenter. So Sadi, I'll give it back to you, right?
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, that was our presentation from our panelists. So just to give you a bit of background, in the summer of 2021 this year, we conducted an industry survey looking at the adoption rate of Industry 4.0 throughout the pandemic. And we polled over 200 manufacturers, senior manufacturing leaders around 5 key issues: engagement, investment, data, process, and cybersecurity. And then later on, in August, we had an in-depth roundtable discussion discussing the results of the survey. I know our panelists here today were also a part of that, and we came away with a few key points from that roundtable that we want to sort of talk about as we focus on what manufacturing will look like in 2022. And but just to give you a bit of background on the survey, what did it look like? The respondents of the survey were senior executives or managers. 42% of them had an ownership stake. 63% had revenues over 10 million. And I think this was mentioned by the panelists as well. 39% had under 50 employees. Most of the manufacturers in Canada are, of course, SMEs and small businesses. And the manufacturers we polled were also across a wide variety of industries. And the average age of the respondents was 53 years old. So with that out of the way, like I mentioned, we had we had a few key takeaways from the roundtable back in August, and I sort of condensed them into sort of 5 key questions that I sort of wanted to throw back to our panelists and sort of take a deeper dive into. So I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon, and I will start off by highlighting one of the statistics we saw in the survey around cybersecurity. And you know, some of our industry panelists noted that the statistic was a little bit alarming. Manufacturers have expressed confidence around their cybersecurity abilities despite not having a breach response plan or a disaster recovery plan, with respondents saying 35% had a breach response plan, 42% had a disaster recovery plan. So I wanted to ask, how can manufacturers understand the severity or seriousness of the increased number of cyber attacks, and what should their response be as they adopt IIoT?
Sadi, maybe I can start off. I think this is a little more than a little concerning, because at the same time, the number of companies, or the percentage of companies that have actually reported an attack, is much higher this year than it has been in previous years. So let's not be under any illusion. This is an important problem. Companies are under attack. And I don't think, especially manufacturing, because it's so complicated, it's not just IoT within the company, within the factory. It's also the across the supply chain. It's the components in product and in the equipment as well here. So and of course it's data breach around IP and everything else. So it is an extensive area of concern. I think the other thing that is really important to note is that this isn't a technology problem, or you don't solve it with technology. It's a human problem. 95% of the vulnerability is because of human error, and so it's that training, knowing, making sure that you have a plan, a response plan, recovery plan. But that's most of the focus needs to be on prevention rather than response and recovery. And I think the most important thing here is to have a good cybersecurity awareness program for employees, and that can be on the shop floor as well as in management and information management as well. I think that's very important. And again, as I was saying, reach out, because there are lots of organizations that can provide really good cybersecurity advice and training programs, and a number of these are public agencies that can help too.
Jay, I think you're right on there, and our data was showing the same thing, that a careless or an unaware employee is the top point of vulnerability, and that's key. But something else we noted too was the sense of complacency throughout the manufacturing sector. A lot of industry feels they're doing enough, and they don't realize how exposed they are, especially when they're adopting new technology or connecting systems digitally, and where their exposure points are. And so that training is absolutely vital, but also looking into what are those points of vulnerability when they're bringing on new technology, connecting to new systems, that sort of thing, especially with their supply chain. In a lot of cases, what we've seen is, instead of a specific company being targeted directly, the cyber attacks are going to their suppliers or their supply chain as a means to access their business. So having that complacency removed and being aware of where those vulnerabilities are is going to be key.
Just maybe to add to what Jay and Scott just mentioned is, we're also monitoring this point, and invest in the digital skills and digital training of your staff. And it gets into how to navigate, how to use devices. It sounds basic, however, how to use responsible and responsive method to protect ourselves, like virus, how to do the best practices when it comes to password, how to move also. We've seen this in focus group, like how important it is to remove the outdated technology, software, hardware, and upgrade yourself with the newest technology, with cloud-based. We were a perfect example at EMC. We were on premise just before COVID hit, and we were a victim of a cyber attack, and ending up losing months and obviously the cost of the opportunity and the business to run for a number of months without our CRM. So perfect example. But yes, digital training at all level, and as well as upgrading technology and equipment.
And I can jump in, and really I can echo what everyone else said. And I want to bring it back to one of the actual stats. I think in the survey, if I remember right, it was something like 80+% of companies said they have suffered some kind of attack. And yet over 90% of companies said, we are doing enough on the cybersecurity front. And that just kind of shocked me. It was a bit alarming, as we all noticed. And then also just speaking away from the stats, but just more generically, I agree that the points of vulnerability, some of them have been mentioned, but some of them people don't even realize. I was reading, there was an article I just saw yesterday about a keynote speaker at a cybersecurity conference. And he listed out, he said one of the greatest risks is up and down the supply chain. And it can be, for example, your supplier or your customer has a login to your portal, and maybe they can hack you through there. It can be something like you have your own developer on staff doing some customizations or some development work around your IoT. Their login may have elevated privileges you never thought of. Somebody hacks the developer's login, they have the keys to the kingdom. And I think part of the problem is companies don't know these points of attack, and that's why they need some independent help on securing themselves, because it's inside your own four walls. It's also up and down the supply chain. And we've all heard about, there was that pipeline in the US that was hacked, and nowadays you don't even blink anymore. When you hear about some even major company got hacked, you just turn the page and read the next page of the newspaper, right? So it's coming. So I think companies really do need to be aware, be concerned, and put a strategy in place to be both preventative and, heaven forbid, to be reactive as well, a plan if you do get breached.
Yeah, I think to Steve's point about the supply chain, it's really important. And it's not only your own security, it's the security of your suppliers here. So making sure that your suppliers and your customers, if they're connected to you, have adequate cybersecurity measures themselves are really important. And even if it doesn't affect the security of your data, of course, a shutdown in the supply chain, as we all know, can cause severe damage to right across the entire industry. So I think that's really important. Look, also begin to demand and what are the cybersecurity arrangements among the companies that you're dealing with here. The other thing, the stat that was a little bit alarming is that a fairly high percentage of companies said that cybersecurity problems kept them from investing in new technology. And I think that that's the wrong way to look at it. I think what you need to do is be smart around the cybersecurity safeguards that you have in place, but don't let this, because it is manageable, don't let it become such a barrier to investment in technology that you can't take advantage of the benefits of that technology at the same time.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. And sort of related to that last point, another one of the alarming statistics that I wanted to sort of throw back to you guys as well was that I can't remember the exact number, but there seemed to be a resounding consistency around the number of manufacturers who believe that an IoT implementation would actually open them up to an attack, a cyber attack. So I'm wondering if you guys can maybe speak a little bit about why manufacturers are thinking like this and what are sort of why that's problematic.
Maybe I'll start, and we've had direct, pre-COVID in person, a lot of live conversations with industry about this, but that complacency that I mentioned, and some of it has to do with kind of the old school of where industry has been and the generation that has come up in manufacturing, in particular the last 30 years. They didn't have to deal with technological issues or cybersecurity or anything, and so in businesses where there's maybe more traditional or kind of old school manufacturing happening, these have never been considerations until now. So these are new areas to get into. So as these businesses are transitioning and using technology and using some of new practices, and they're exposed to these kind of perils, that's why that skill upgrades, the training, all of that needs to be there. There needs to be also an understanding and a priority set at the top level of the organization. Is the board of a company or the CEO of a company telling the team to pay attention to this, and that this is an important issue that we need to tackle? Or is it just one of those other issues that may not be as high a priority? And you can see really what the level of priority is just by the budget. And what we've seen with companies is that the budget before a cyber incursion and the budget after a company's incurred some sort of cyber breach completely different. And all of a sudden it becomes an issue after they've experienced the pain. And so part of this is what is the evolution of a manufacturer look like? Where are they? And what priority is this? And then that will drive the agenda for what happens throughout the company.
I agree, Scott. And I think the other point around the setting the budget, because one of the comments here in the chat was, what's the right balance, and this could be pretty costly sometimes to look at this, and it's going to be costly if you make the wrong decisions here. And I think, as we were all saying before, making the right decisions around technology and aligning those to business objectives, and to make sure that, unfortunately, you see all too many times a disconnect between senior management and on one hand and tech on the other. Here's money, go and solve the problem, or we need a tech solution to something, go and do it. And that's not necessarily aligned to the business objectives. It's not necessarily aligned to what necessarily has to be done. And as we were all saying before, the important part here is the training and to overcome human error. So, I think there needs to be a much more engagement. And unfortunately, as you say, you get the engagement after the problem has been incurred. But it's another example, I think, of really needing to make sure that the right decisions around data protection and technology are aligned to top level business planning.
Just to add to this, and just to close on as well, it speaks as well as what we discussed earlier about leadership and the ability to decentralize the leadership, not necessarily to keep it at the highest level, at the C level, where we're seeing a movement with, and we do a lot of work with managers and supervisors where they are craving for leadership, and they are craving for decision-making authorities, which we all know that the manufacturing sector has been not designed this way, where the decisions are made at the top. So I could see in the next years as the speed of change is forcing us to make these decisions quicker and quicker. And I think COVID was really good for being a kickoff on that front. It's been happening for a few years, where middle managers and people that are very close to the work as the authority to make these decisions and to take ownership and to express leadership in their own job. So that's something to follow.
Thank you, JP. I think in the interest of time, we'll move to the next key finding from our roundtable discussion. I know a number of presentations also heavily emphasize this, but clearly there's a labor shortage and a talent shortage across manufacturing, and our survey findings were no different in emphasizing that. We discussed during the roundtable that the talent shortage was another barrier to growth. And I'm wondering how IoT adoption can play a role in attracting young people with these key digital skills in manufacturing. Is it accurate to say that the more we adopt advanced manufacturing initiatives and IoT solutions, the easier it will be to attract top-tier talent?
Oh, for sure. There's no question that this is a card that we have to play, making manufacturing high-tech in nature. That's definitely a card, but that's just one card We've just been out all summer, all the way up to close a survey last week, and 60% of the manufacturing firm out of 750 are saying they don't even have a succession planning or succession plan. So, and this is the ability to recruit in an effective manner. And we all know that companies are spending tons of dollars right now, tons of dollars to recruit, but they're having a hard time to retain. So the ability that, yeah, one thing is to recruit. The other thing is to onboard, providing youth, these new generation worker to stay and to look at a career and bringing them perspective and possibility in order for them to grow within the sector. That's a big area where we have to do much better. And you get into the development and how you, not necessarily just onboarding, but upskill and prepare this new generation. And after that, it gets into being super progressive to retain them and to have incentive as well as good salary. Because here, Jay mentioned, we're competing with other sectors here. So our package, our salary, our benefit has to match, what we can offer. So there's a lot to do on that front. But definitely to attract top talent, we have. But on the other end, we have to back it up with good onboarding and development and retention plans.
Yeah, and with that in mind, we actually do have a question from the audience regarding the talent shortage. We have an attendee asking if what regional disparities look like in terms of the labor shortage, and if there are certain areas of the country that can better support manufacturing. And I believe the attendee said that Manitoba, for example, has a lower density of facilities and hence available resources for added manufacturing capacity. I'm just wondering, JP, you probably have a lot of knowledge on what the country looks like in terms of labor shortage, and if you can maybe expand.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's not a cookie cutter. It's a very much a regional market. So we're following about 50 manufacturing hubs, and I could say it's true in Manitoba, but I could say it's the same thing in Quebec and obviously in BC. We're facing different issues. It all depends. Like I'm looking at the stats regarding demographics. We all know that fortunately they used to say go west, young men, or fortunately it's still the truth. Like it's a much younger workforce in the west. It's a much older workforce in the east as well as the central Canada, Ontario, Quebec. We're facing huge challenges in front of us in terms of a big segment who's preparing their next project, which is not IoT, it's retirement. So that will be, but it's absolutely, maybe Scotty, I don't know if you want to add to this.
Yeah, just add that what we've seen in every part of the country is a skills and labor shortage. The challenge in coming up with solutions, it's not the same skill set or the same group of occupations that are affected in every region. So there are some common elements, but it's quite a diverse challenge, and some of it has to do with what manufacturers are in different parts of the country. But for the most part, the shortages are widespread. The solutions are going to be a combination of finding people and attracting new bodies to the manufacturing workforce. So people that either didn't consider manufacturing as a viable career option before, or maybe they were displaced or had originally planned to go through another sector, perhaps, but looking at just the number of hospitality people and tourism, for example, that have been displaced in the last couple of years, certainly there's opportunities for them with some upskilling and maybe reskilling to pursue careers in manufacturing. That can be part of that strategy. Certainly their ability to bring technology skills with them into a new sector would be ideal, but we know it's going to require some support there.
I'd like to add something that's maybe a little bit of a tangent, but I'm thinking of talent as a pipeline, and you want to try and capture that talent as early as possible in the pipeline, rather than waiting till they've already graduated university, had some other jobs, and then try to change their minds. And I'll give you an analogy. So recently I read that universities all over North America are changing their curriculums to offer more and more supply chain programs, degrees in supply chain management, as a result of the chaos created by the pandemic. And so supply chain degrees are in demand. The analogy is, if we can work a story in there or messaging to those same young folks in universities, that the pandemic also, although it created a demand for better management of supply chain, it also created a demand for talent in these cool, high-tech manufacturing plants out there. And then if we can get that messaging upstream as well, and this is way upstream, but I like to think up and down the pipeline. And if we can get that messaging out there at the university level, then maybe we can actually plant some seeds of people going into these types of fields right in university rather than later. I try to do the same with myself. You mentioned in my bio that I work with some local universities, and part of that mentoring and so on is the side effect is people think, oh, that's a cool field that you work in. Maybe I might stream myself towards that after graduation. And it has paid off here and there, but that's more of an informal strategy by me. If that were something that governments and other organizations and universities work together on, I'm sure there could be some successes there.
I agree with Steve, but I think industry has to take the lead here, and we can't. Right now, there are too many companies that wait till someone retires or someone leaves and now looks for someone else out there with exactly the skill sets they need to plug them into a position. There's not a lot of forward planning. There's not an investment. People are treated like fixed assets, that there's no forward thinking about or very little forward thinking about how to develop skill sets and how to develop careers in manufacturing. Very little strategic planning, very little forward thought about what's going to be needed in 5 years, let alone today. And industry itself needs to really step up with those plans, but at the same time engage young people at a really early age. Like right now, it's really primary school and secondary school here, and change the education system. Get out of this crazy idea that you're going to be streamed into a low value career up front because you're not an academic and you're not headed to university. That's one of the most damaging parts of our education system that just precludes people from even thinking about a college degree and skilled trades as a really, really important part of their academic career. And I think the other part of this is a reflection of that is you take a look at our apprenticeship system. Number one, there are a number of colleges, Conestoga being the one that I've spoken to a lot about this, whose intake is now primarily from universities. They're getting kids out of university into the college program because they've gone through university and now they need a practical, technical training program to, and that's crazy. And the second thing is that the average age of people entering apprenticeships in Canada is 27, 10 years later than UK or Germany. This is crazy. And why is it that way? A lot of it is because of the education system and expectations. And if we're going to change that, it's going to have to be up to the manufacturing community to take the lead and to just say to work with the educators, work with parents, work with students, and to build in much more of a an apprenticeship, a workforce training program, or an engagement program here. But that takes a long-term view, and it takes investment, and it takes a view about students and workers where they become assets, and that can grow, and not just people you slot into jobs as you need them.
I want to go back to what I said, and I totally agree. As early as possible, Jay, when it comes to the engagement of the next generation. We're doing groundbreaking work in Ontario right now with high school students, and they're part of the high skill major program, and there's hundreds, thousands of them across the province where they do this professional diploma, and 50% of them are ready to go into the labor force. Another 50% will continue in college and university. Now, what is our response to this as a sector to welcome this 50%, these young men and women who are now specialized? They're 16, 17 years old. They're ready to work. And what we're learning is that school to work transition is simply not there. So these students, they're graduating and they're going into retail or other jobs, service jobs, and they're missing the boat. And they're not having that first job, where we're strong in manufacturing is we are very good at presenting full-time work as well as benefit, which could be a solid foundation for a first job. So a lot to do in the awareness piece, where bringing awareness to employers to have a succession plan and to consider youth as part of it, and to invest in work integrated learning. There's tons of resources. The government is stepping up on that front by providing funding. So if you want to hire a student, whether it's a high school student, a college or university, if you're not considering this as part of your strategy, you're missing the boat right now. There's no question. There's no question on that front.
Yeah. Thank you, JP. Just to move on, in the interest of time, we'll also get to the next session, which has to do with the investment and the amount of dollars being put into advanced manufacturing strategies by manufacturers, and what their focus is going to be in terms of dollar amounts heading into the future. One of the key points made during the roundtable around investment was the strategic versus tactical IIoT implementation brought up by Jason Myers' colleague Stuart Kramer at NGen, and how Jason really emphasized this as well, how important it is not just to ask if IIoT had been applied, but how successful that IIoT implementation has been. So as more companies plan strategic IoT investments and move away from some of the survival reactionary investments, do we expect to see more of a targeted business impact? And I know I can see the chat lighting up as well with questions around investment. I'm wondering if we sort of expect to see any sort of a change in the kinds of investments being made, whether that's around training programs or new technologies and things like that.
I think this is a really important question, and to me, it's not an issue of I've invested in a new technology, or I've got a new robot or automation system. Been in too many plants to see, upgraded automation system at the wrong part of the process. And all it creates is more problems, or types of technology implementation. Everybody was on the 3D printing kick a few years ago, and now you walk in, so you see 3D printers standing idle. It's making the right decisions and the right technology. And to Steve's point, it's really understanding the business and the process, how you add value, what are the non-value adding activities you want to eliminate, how can you improve your process. That's all really good, just basic manufacturing management principles, and then look at the technology, how it can help you do that. But understanding that digital technology can give you a lot more power and a lot more visibility through the use of data to understand the bottlenecks of the process. And so, I see the first part of this is just really good manufacturing management principles, and principles of lean go a long way here. But understanding your process, understanding the capabilities of your workforce and the people, as Scott and JP were saying, and then making the right decisions about technology that are also informed about, well, if we're going to run this successfully and use this technology successfully, what are the business requirements that we need in order to do that, and what are the skills requirements that are necessary to keep this in place as well. So totally agree. It's not an issue about how much we're investing. And in fact, what we should be doing is trying to invest less and get much more out of it. But I think I think that management issue is key.
I hope maybe just to continue on this point, like I hope we're going to see more business impact, and the conversation needs to move. And we discussed this in previous meeting, to move into results. Like we've been going at it for a number of years now. There was a reference in the chat, and I welcome that reference regarding case studies, or I call them performance stories. Another word we use is workplace performance projects, and the ROI that comes with it, and having conversation, not necessarily just on projections or planning or forecasting, but having a conversation in roundtable on results and ROI and business impact, and actually application and things that's been implemented. And so we can monitor this and bring the stories out. That's, I think, a super important point. And that might be the next round of meetings in the next round tables.
Yeah, thank you, GP. And with that sort of related point in mind, I'm wondering how much, and I feel like I know what you guys are going to say, but I want to ask it anyways. How much do you guys think the amount of spend affects the success versus failure of an implementation? Is it at all related? Because I know Jason, alluded to many manufacturers who have failed with very expensive implementation. So I'm wondering, how much does a spending amount actually affect the success versus failure of an implementation?
It's an interesting question. I think one of my view is that the more you spend, the more you're likely to fail, because you're trying to take on too much. And I think, a number of, and Steve, you got the background here, but my sense is that incremental, the more once you begin to adopt digital technologies, it takes you from there. You learn more about, you're able to analyze the data. You have a far better view of the issues that you're facing, the challenges in your process, the bottlenecks and so forth. So it takes then you to the next stage of improvement. And that incremental step-by-step application, I think is, and that doesn't have to be expensive. It's reading the data you're probably already collecting, and moving forward from there. The biggest, when you look at Bain and Accenture and McKinsey and some of the big consulting companies they're reporting large digital transformation projects. And of course, they're talking about huge projects, and the MNEs that they're working with. They're reporting 95% failure rates there. But a lot of it is because you shouldn't look at tech as coming in to solve all your problems, and you put a solution in place, and then that creates all sorts of problems in your process. You should be looking at tech as a tool to help you improve your business and go forward with continuous improvement, go forward with your with better design. It enables you to do more, but it's not the silver bullet that's going to save your business.
Yeah, Jason, couldn't agree with you more there. And from the point of view of a technology company, we're an ERP vendor. We actually see this all the time. And you might think that as an ERP vendor, we'd be happy to sell you as much software as we can. But no, like we actually want you to have a strategy. I can't emphasize that enough. We have companies, and in the small and medium-sized space, I know companies don't necessarily take the time to plan a business strategy. But if there's something I can tell the audience here after you listen to this entire panel and you go away and you think, I am interested in getting some, using some IoT technologies to make me better, your first conversation needs to be document and plan out your business strategy. And its business strategy is a layer at the top. Below that is your IT strategy, and below that are the applications and the points in your process where you will insert technology. And people don't actually usually start at the top. They start down here and start throwing technology at it. Quick anecdote, one of our customers emailed me the other day and actually asked about business strategy. She said, you know, we have this feeling that we're trying to latch on to a whole bunch of random IT projects. And before we get too deep on this, can you, or do you know somebody who can help us document our business strategy up here first and let the business strategy drive the IT strategy, not the other way around? And I thought compliments to you for recognizing that, because a lot of small and medium-sized companies don't recognize that. And then to answer your question, Sadi, how does the amount that you spend relate to the results that you get? Ironically, as Jason said, sometimes it's an inverse relationship. The more you spend in a chaotic way results in not very good results. So I'm a big supporter of strategy first and software second.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And sort of moving on to our next finding, which was how the pandemic impacted implementation. And of course, supply chains were exacerbated. There were a lot of crunches and a lot of negative things happening, but there were also a lot of interesting positives that happened in the manufacturing industry as a result of the pandemic. And one of the interesting findings was that due to the pandemic, there seems to be an increased appetite by competing manufacturers to share data with each other. And it was at 21%. And I don't know what the number was last year, but I can tell you it was significantly lower than 21%, which was an interesting finding. And my question for the panelists is sort of, is this a trend that's expected to continue, or is this more of a tactical or survival response by marrying up supply chains to save on distribution costs, et cetera, and things like that? And I know Steve was originally noticed this in August, and I sort of wanted to pick on him to get his thoughts first here.
Sure, and I believe this is not just tactical. I believe that if you don't do this in the long term, you will fall behind your competitors. And somewhere in the report as well, I remember reading that one of the panelists, actually one of our roundtable panelists, commented that there will be this death by 1,000 cuts or death by inch, and it will result in, if you don't keep up, if you don't, for example, integrate your supply chain to the rest out there, slowly you will become less efficient. You will become excluded from those conversations with the partners in your supply chain, and you will end up having the lowest profit margin because you'll barely cover your costs. So I do believe this is not tactical. This is strategic. We are actually seeing this out in the real world when companies, both our existing customers right now and prospective new customers, are coming to us saying, hey, we need a new ERP system. You know what keeps popping up more and more now? Ability to integrate up and down the supply chain. This used to be a wish list thing years ago, and now it's coming up all the time. I need more efficiencies up and down my supply chain so that what? So that I can react in a more agile way in partnership with my customer, in partnership with my supplier, because the world is changing really fast now with the pandemic, and you need that agility. So absolutely, it's not tactical, it's strategic, and if you don't do it, you will fall behind.
Interesting. Yeah, and sort of related to the pandemic impact, we had an interesting question from someone in the chat that I sort of wanted to throw to Jason in a way. I think the question was, current supply chain problem indicates the importance of building both a short-term and long-term wholesome manufacturing strategy for Canada. Do our governments have solid plans to help and promote our Canadian manufacturing towards the right direction? The reason is because obviously NGen is all about collaboration there. You guys are always connecting, you know, SMEs with government funding and things like that. So I'm just wondering if there's anything happening in the supply chain space to sort of help that problem and respond to the pandemic's impact to that.
Yeah, good question, Sadi. And I let me start off where building on what Steve was saying. I agree that this is not the supply chain issues, and integration across the supply chain is not just a pandemic impact, although that aggravated it hugely. But it's, you know, you take a look at the supply chain problems out there today, and there's a huge amount of risk here, and that also being compounded by stakeholder expectations, customer expectations, government expectations that you need to know what's happening down your supply chain in terms of quality, in terms of you know, where the product is coming from today, and in terms of any risk that can be associated with it, including you know, carbon footprint, environmental management processes. So I think one thing that the pandemic and the supply chain problems have shown everybody is the need to actually be much more, or to make sure that supply chain is much more visible here, and leading into more traceability as well. My impression is that manufacturers probably know who their first tier suppliers are, but they probably don't even know who their second tier suppliers are, and let alone further down here. So I think that that's going to continue. And if anything, just that importance of sharing data and developing the data sharing applications across supply chain is going to be really growing in the future. But to your point about, you know, let's take a look at product lines required for the pandemic here, because that has been a priority issue for the government here. I think I see a few problems, and we were very engaged in investing. We invested $80 million in new manufacturing capabilities to bring critical products, everything from vaccines to test kits to PPE, medical devices like ventilators, onto the market. There were, I think, I would say that there is a little bit of, there is a simplistic approach here that policymakers see. They expect, you know, according to economics, the market snaps back. If there's demand, you get supply. It doesn't work that way, of course. There's huge investments have to be put in place. You got to figure out the supply chain. Government supported the development of ventilators, only to find out that, you know, thousands of parts, thousands of components go into these things, and they were all coming from China. You got to solve that problem, or at least figure out where the crucial bottlenecks are. We don't have in Canada, again related to the pandemic, adequate testing or standards or certification procedures. N95 masks, for instance, Canadian companies were excluded from testing in NIOSH testing in the United States during the pandemic, and yet we're manufacturing better masks than N95 masks here in Canada. Can't get those onto the market easily because we don't have standards that where the users can identify appropriate substitutes for N95 masks, and we don't have an expedited standards, certification, and testing procedure in Canada to back that up. We're developing that, and that's important part of what the government is trying to do. But it was a huge gap there, and just in terms of the overall inventory of critical products, that had not been maintained. And then the other part of it, of course, is procurement. A lot of investment into setting up manufacturing capacity in some of these critical products areas. And then when it comes to procurement, who's going to buy it? I mean, it was fine when the government itself was buying the product, but when the government itself replenished their inventories, they kind of stepped back. And where was the market? So part of that's a business problem, of course, but there's not a lot the government needs to do to support the market, support procurement, provide an outlet. So if we're manufacturing more than we need in Canada, how can we get that out internationally? An organization like the Canadian Commercial Corporation that actually goes out and contracts directly with foreign governments and then subcontracts back to Canadian suppliers is a perfect mechanism, but it has never been used here. So we need to, again, look more strategically at what we're doing. And this is, if we're talking about taking a look at critical supply chains and critical manufacturing needs in Canada, then what are those needs? We need to do a better job at actually identifying where are the choke points here, and what do we really need to support the supply chain. And it may not be the actual manufacturing of vaccines. It might be the capability to pivot into producing new vaccines, or it might be the ability to pivot into producing PPE as required. But where government needs to do a lot more work, I think, is focusing on the infrastructure, on the making sure there's a market there, and making sure that companies are supported after we do all of this investment in creating new manufacturing capabilities. They're making sure that we're doing our job in making sure that the new products and the existing companies here are able to commercialize these products around the world.
Perfect. Thank you, Jay. In the interest of time, I think I do want to move on to the next topic, our next finding from the roundtable, just to end off on this before we run out of time here. Looking at sort of technology and how it was applied and implemented, and what sort of technologies manufacturers are considering, I'm wondering, what questions do manufacturers need to be asking in order to ensure that their IoT implementation is a successful one from a technological perspective? And beyond looking at the problems they want to solve, are there pitfalls and certain strategies they should avoid when it comes to looking at robotics or automation or the cloud, 3D printing and things like that?
Maybe I'll jump in to start. One of the first considerations, I think, is often overlooked, and this is one of the first things I've been asking our industry is do you have the internal capacity, the capability, your staff skill set, competencies? Do you have training in place to successfully adopt, operate, and integrate this new technology, whether it's automation, whether it's robotics, whatever it is they're looking at? And are they attributing that to a direct business need with a strategy in place? Or are they going to be looking strictly to external third-party subject matter experts, which then puts them sort of at the mercy of their schedules and availability, or is it a combination? And so where companies have not sort of answered yes to the first part, we saw that reflected in the level of investment. One of the top reasons for not investing in technology, one of the barriers there was that internal capability. So this is sort of a starting question. If something makes sense to their business needs and their priorities and objectives, terrific, then certainly pursue it. Don't just go after what the salesperson is trying to sell you, because, and no offense to any equipment or technology providers on the webinar today, but it can't just be about what your company is selling. It has to be about what the manufacturer needs and what makes the most sense to that business. If you can meet that, both sides are going to be successful.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And sort of related to this, we had a really lovely question from the chat that I did want to address. I'm wondering, I think the question was, how can you reach and educate presidents and VPs on disruptive technologies and the impact it will have on the industry? Especially when it comes to technology and how it's applied. I'm wondering what sort of efforts manufacturers and associations can undertake to sort of educate these senior leaders on what's available out there in the marketplace that can help them make a responsible and successful decision.
Well, this kind of follows on from what Scott was saying. There are a number of programs out there, of course, to talk about the importance of various, let me take artificial intelligence. There's lots of programs out there talking about what artificial intelligence is and the potential benefits of using this. There are a lot of programs out there talking, machine learning and all sorts of different technologies that could be applied. I think there are two things that are missing here. One is just and it goes to what Scott was saying. Are there roadmaps? And this is what we're working on. I think others are working on this too. What's a roadmap for successful deployment look like? And all it is a series of questions that and tools maybe that can help take companies through and managers through a decision-making process so that they're making they have a chance to ask the right questions so that they can make the right decisions. And right now, this is frankly the basis of our transformation leadership program, just ask the right questions and do the analysis that's required to get at what Scott was saying, understanding what your actual competencies are and what your capabilities are and where the gaps are. Because I think that's really important, and there are tools that are available to do that. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is, and again, looking back at artificial intelligence. So to me, let's look at the outcomes of what artificial intelligence can deliver. It's better information that can be, or better knowledge that can be derived from the data that you are collecting right now. It's a system of prediction, and maybe going forward, it's more autonomy. But let me just talk about better information and the system of prediction. Rather than talking about, oh, I've got an AI system that is perfect for you, and it does all of this great machine learning and stuff like that. The real question that people should be asking is, where is better data analytics? What do I need to learn about my business that my data could show me that I don't know right now? Or where in my process is a system of prediction going to improve my process? Those are manageable business decisions that can be understood by manufacturers because they're part of a continuous improvement. They're part of basic manufacturing management approach. And that type of, and it's exactly what you've been saying, Steve. It's understanding how technology can help deliver your business objectives, help improve your processes. Those are the key questions here, and it comes back to asking the right questions in the first place. But looking at technology in terms of the business outcomes that it can deliver, and where that's important as you're trying to run your business, where it fits into your business. And if it doesn't fit into your business, maybe it's a wrong decision to actually even think about implementing these technologies.
Thank you, Jay. And I think we'll have to probably cut things off there. I wanted to, first of all, thank all of our panelists for joining us this afternoon, as well as all of our attendees. I know how busy schedules are this time of year, so really appreciate all of you taking the time to provide your insights. This was a thrilling discussion. I wanted to thank, of course, the sponsors of our report, Salesforce, Cispro, Alberta Innovates, and Alps Welding, for making the report possible, and as well as a huge thank you to our sponsors of the event today, EMC, Engine, and Cispro. If you wanted to take a look at the report, actually, you can check it out on our website at plant.ca /2022 Advanced Manufacturing Outlook. There'll probably be a picture that'll take you right to the download of the report. I wrote the entire thing, so I'd appreciate it if you read it. You know, let me know what you think. If you love it, if you hate it, something in between. You know, I'd appreciate the feedback anyways. So thank you. We really appreciate everyone attending today, and we hope you have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, Sadi.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Take care.